So here I am. It's about December 20th, and I'm going to be showing you the progress on this mass heater, how it works, just the initial construction of it. This heater, this is basically a bed stove concept. So it's based upon there's a Chinese Kang stove that it's based upon, and Korean Undol stove as well. So basically how this stove works is on the principle of mass heating, which is an older principle of heating the home, which was more common before the advent of electricity. Mass heating it relies on radiant heat versus convective heat. Most wood stoves, for example, rely on convective heat, which essentially heats the air only, and is a lot less efficient, so you end up using a lot more wood and you have a lot more heat output for the wood you're using. Mass stoves, on the other hand, are based on radiant heat, so the idea is you have a lot of mass, such as in this case these big heavy stones, and this whole frame here has been filled with clayey soil, and that is going to provide the mass. So basically the idea is there will be a stove connected here, right here. This is the opening for the chimney. Okay, the heat and the smoke is going to go through that opening, and it's going to follow a channel that is in this clayey soil, and it's going to go out the other end, which I will show you. Right here. Okay, this is not finished. This whole stove is not finished. So this is the first video of several that's going to sort of document how it works and how it's made. So this is the exit for that smoke channel or chimney. So it goes through the mass and exits out the end of this shelter here. Now if we go back inside, this is how it's initially made. It's not finished again, but it can be made for free from local wood and dirt and rocks, essentially, and maybe some clay, and that's all you need. I have adapted a bit of parts like bamboo and some pallet wood, which is also I got for free, but you can just use sticks or something if you need to. So the radiant heat, going back to radiant heat, the radiant heat is going to be stored as that smoke goes through the chimney channel, through this whole mass of clay and out the end, which I just showed you. That heat and that smoke is going to be absorbed by this mass right here, which is a sort of bed you can lie on. Okay, so that normally in a conventional stove, you would have all that heat that was in the smoke, it would simply go out the top of the chimney and be wasted. But the idea here is that the stove, the chimney of the stove, is actually this mass, and the mass is going to delay the smoke long enough as it goes through this channel that heat will have more time to spread out into the mass. And so what ends up happening is if you only burn, say, once or twice or a couple times a day, a few times a day, you will have all that heat that ends up getting stored in the mass of this stove throughout the day. So the stove, even after it finishes burning, will continue through this mass to radiate heat throughout the whole day or the whole night. So you don't have to constantly upkeep the fire as you would in a conventional wood stove. So it saves a lot of time and energy on the person's part, and also you're using less wood because it's more efficient with the heat being produced, in that it's not all being lost in the smoke. A lot of that heat in the smoke is getting distributed into the mass. So those are the reasons why, in my opinion, it's far more it's far better, and it's an older, simpler technology. This has been refined into concepts like rocket mass heaters, and this is just a very simple, a simpler concept, a mass heater basically. There's no rockets involved here. Okay. Yeah. So how is this made? Hopefully that made sense. Now, how is this made? Basically, you make a box frame on the ground, and this is going to be very heavy, so ideally you want to do this on the ground, or you want to have it supported really well. But you make a box frame. In this case, I just pounded stakes into the ground, cedar stakes that have been charred so they won't rot away too quickly, or very slowly. They'll take a long time. And I made a box frame here all around. Okay, it's on a bit of a slope. It's on a bit of a hill, so this end is about 2 feet off the ground, whereas that end is about a foot off the ground. So it's level on the top. Now what you do is, once you make that frame, you put a base layer of something insulative, because the ground, which is cold, in the winter, is going to rob a lot of the heat out of your mass here as it's being warmed by the smoke. So to prevent that, you put kind of an insulative layer as the first layer inside the frame. In this case, what I found out, which was very useful, is that if you use charcoal, regular charcoal, and you mix it with a bit of clay to bind it together some, and you use that charcoal mixture as the base layer in here, about 2 inches or so, then that ends up being an effective insulation to the same or comparable degree as insulation you would buy from the store. So that is the base layer here, which I can't really show, unfortunately, in that I've already covered the base layer, which is somewhere down here, with about 2 feet of clay dirt. So I can't really show that at this point. But the next phase is basically having some rocks or something relatively fireproof in the area where the stove will be, and that acts as a bulwark or barrier to prevent the collapse of the clayey dirt you're gonna throw in here. So you put kind of a barrier of stones on either end, especially on this end, which is gonna get much hotter. You can't really use wood on this end. You can use wood on the sides. Maybe you could use wood on the back. I use rocks on the back. But on the front, you definitely need something that can withstand high heat, especially where that smoke is going to go in. You're going to have the stove attached here. That can't be wood. So the wood frame has to end at this point, but this is effectively a part of the frame as well. So that completes, the box, so to speak. Now you have this container. You've put the first layer of insulative layer. What you do next is you need to find non-organic soil. So just dig, below the topsoil layer in most places, and you'll get to a non-organic layer of soil, which may be sandy, it may be clay. It doesn't matter that much as long as it's not organic. And that's going to provide the main mass of your stove. And you just shovel that in and pack it in and tamp it in so it's really firm and nice. So it's not too loose in there, and it's really firm in the frame. And that's the next thing you do. So once you've done that, you kind of have your mass set up, and the next phase, which is what I'm going to be documenting at this point, is basically you're going to be continuing the smoke channel from where the chimney opening is. You're going to continue this smoke channel by carving it out of the mass. And on top of that smoke channel are going to be laid very flat stones. And that smoke is going to heat up not just this mass, but it's going to really warm up the stones you put on top especially. And that is going to be the surface on which you are going to be able to lie, or, you know, just have leisure, or whatever. You can use this as a bed or a bench, or etc. In China, this surface here, when it's warm in the winter, basically becomes the centerpiece of the home. Everyone is sitting or lounging or sleeping on these Kang beds, and sometimes they're much bigger. Sometimes even the whole floor of a home is one big stove, such as in Korea. So that is the first stage of the construction, which I've shown you here, and I'm going to continue at this point to actually show you how I make it. So this is the same stove, a little bit of an update now. Here is the opening right here, the beginning of the channel, the smoke channel. Here's the top of the stove, and so I've begun to dug this channel out where the smoke's gonna go. The channel has to be lined with these rocks, and on top of these rocks I'm gonna put big flat stones like this. This is the headstone. This one's the thickest. So here's the stove at the next stage of construction. So as you can see, the channel, I have now completely dug this channel out. I've lined it with stones, and I've laid these stones on top of the channel. So inside here, there's now one hollow pathway, one hollow channel. If you take a look in here, that is the entrance. Smoke goes in there and up through there. And out the end here. Here is the stove on its first test fire. Okay, this is just a rudimentary front I've built here. So the fire is right there. The fire goes up. You can see it going that way. And the fire goes, or the hot smoke goes through this channel under these rocks. And of course it hasn't been touched up yet, but this is just a test firing. Proof of concept, it does work. You can see the fire right here, and the smoke is going into the opening right there. Right there. See that flickering? Now when you go outside, you can see, you can just see the smoke coming out of the end. Okay, this is the stove after some tinkering and improvement. It is now in a use phase, so I'm actually using it now. This is the first night I'm gonna spend on the stove bed. So the stove is not the prettiest thing in the world. There is the front. There's the fire. Okay. There's the top of the stove. And here is the sleeping portion here. It's about -4 right now, and I'm very comfortable on this stove. It still needs a few little leaks, smoke leaks to be patched up, but it's not too bad. Okay. This is the firebox right here. So basically I've got just 2 flat stones which I can peel back, and there's the fire going up where it's supposed to go. So I'm very satisfied with how it's working right now. It's burning very efficiently. I'm getting great heat transfer onto the mass, onto the bed stove portion. And the smoke is flowing well. I don't have a lot of backflow. It's not a huge problem. I still need to get used to how the stove functions. But right now it's going very well. So that's the stove in use, and it hasn't been, I haven't touched it up completely yet, but for all intents and purposes it is working now. And that's a Kang stove, or a bed stove. I made this for free, using almost entirely natural materials, just from the woods and so forth, the pallet, and a few pieces like this bamboo, which were free, or I had them from before. I added those, but you don't need them. You can do this all for free with all natural materials, and I must say I'm quite impressed by this right now. So that's a bed stove, Kang stove.